WOCA.
All right, 25 minutes before 11 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. Great looking Monday morning. You know, the phone weather that we are responsible here at WOCA, I'm the guy who actually reads that. And every single morning I call that thing and I tell you what the weather is going to be. And there's always this air quality part of it. Almost every day it says air quality good. And last week was the first time ever it said air quality unhealthy. For our guest who was listening in, he's about to speak to us. His name is Jeb Taylor. His book is called Saving Civilization. And I want him to know that this is a pretty pristine area. And to hear that the air quality was unhealthy was like, wow, this is like Philadelphia or New York or something. Years ago, I had flown into Los Angeles, and from the airplane, from the air, I could see this dome of dirty air covering Los Angeles. And it's so obviously clear that we could be doing better as far as keeping the environment clean. That experience led to a song. Robin is not here, by the way. She's up in New York right now with her husband. But the thing many of you know who live in the area that Robin and I have done children's music in the past. It's like another lifetime ago. But I wanted to bring up just one part of a song that we wrote. And it's called Forest Green, and this was the first part of that song. It said, "All I want is a world to pass on to the children, green as the world passed on to me. Keep it alive from the seas to the skies. Let each breath the children take come easily, and let them see forests green, let them see waters clean," and it goes on and on and on like that. Seems like a simple, no nonsense, really easy to understand and grasp message. And yet, I remember when we first did it, we were called tree huggers. It was like, oh my goodness, who would be against this whole idea of trying to preserve the beautiful world that I remember growing up in when I was a kid in the 60s, which probably wasn't even as pristine as the world my parents grew up in. But just to preserve it somewhat, why would that have any backlash or any kind of even political opposition? With that said, let's talk about the book. It's called Saving Civilization, a frank and innovative discussion about civilization, what has brought it to the brink of collapse and the obstacles that must be overcome before we can achieve sustainability. Jeb Taylor has written this insightful book, and he's on the phone, and I made him wait long enough. Good morning, Jeb. Thank you for being patient with me.
Good to hear you.
Yeah, you too. Where are you right now?
I am in Buffalo, Wyoming.
I hope you could hear the intro. Could you?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, good. Because I think we're on the same page here. And are you facing the same kind of opposition as I was describing that we felt?
I think we have come to regard environmental issues as green issues as something that is almost anti free enterprise. And people take two stances on this, the way I see it, Larry, is that if you are inhibiting the growth of the economy and freedom of, to exercise whatever you want in the pursuit of money, you're an environmentalist, and you're sort of, they regard that as almost anti-American at this stage. And to me, they don't have to be, mutually exclusive. What's best for us in the short run is what's best for us in the long run. And we just have to realize that and change the way we behave and accordingly.
And the part of this, and I want you to elaborate because you do such a good job in the book of taking on this topic. But I wondered why anybody would be opposed to, let's say, a cleaner energy, and especially if, let's say, the Exxon people said, you know what, we could make a lot of money with this thing they call solar, or with some other alternative. I mean, I can't imagine why they would be opposed to it if it made just as much money or even maybe more money, because as the guy who pays the electric bill, that's me, you know what, I don't really care that you're getting it from the sun. If you can make it from the sun, I'd prefer it, because then guess what? When my children land in LA one day, maybe there's no more dome of dirt.
Well, if you'd like to devote a little bit of time into energy production, I'd be happy to do that.
Okay.
And honestly, Larry, it's not as cut and dried as I once thought, because I've been doing a lot of research on it. Solar is not as clean. I mean, producing the energy is really clean. There's nothing cleaner than producing energy with solar. But unfortunately, producing solar panels is very environmentally an unsound practice. And if we produce enough solar panels so that we were, generating enough electricity to make a difference, we would have, really serious issues in dealing with solar panels as they're wearing out and having to recycle them. So I'm not sure that, it all looks wonderful, this solar and wind power. But the truth of the matter is that we can never, realistically, we can never get enough solar power or wind power to replace coal in producing energy right now. Maybe in 300 or 500 or 1,000 years, technology will improve to the point where we could. But the population is increasing, energy demands are increasing, and solar and wind cannot keep up with it.
Okay.
This is disappointing for me to say this. I have been a proponent of this for many, many years, and I've recently just been receiving information that it's just not realistic.
So then is the realistic avenue to stick with what we've been doing but make it somehow cleaner?
No, I don't think so. The coal company, we most of our energy comes from burning coal. By far, the vast majority of it does. In recent years, because of fracking, we've had a lot more natural gas, and utility companies are burning more natural gas in comparison than they were years ago. So our carbon footprint in the United States, at least, is down a little bit, which is a good thing. But the coal companies and the oil companies, they are actually big proponents of. They actually give money and support solar and wind power because they know it will never ever compete with them.
Well, why do they pay into it then?
Because they don't want you to think about the other source. And this is something that until very, very recently I wouldn't even have mentioned. But I recently saw a program called Pandora's Promise, and it led me doing more research, and it was a number of environmentalists that had, after doing original research, had come to the conclusion that the only two viable options in producing energy today, serious ones, are coal or fossil fuels, in particular coal, and nuclear. And they made complete switches in their stances in judging, the dangers and risks of nuclear energy versus the dangers and risks of burning coal. Right now in the United States, it's estimated that the 1,200 people die a year from coal burning pollution. And that's not to include any of the other health effects that are considered. And the truth of the matter is that not a single person has ever died in this country from the production of nuclear energy. Not one.
But in this country, but certainly there were plenty who died in Chernobyl.
Chernobyl, the total number of people that died in Chernobyl was 31, and that is it was a horrible accident, and it's had huge consequences. Chernobyl was not a very safe nuclear power plant. And we have the capacity now, and I don't want to I'm playing devil's advocate a little bit here, Larry, because I'm not convinced that this is the answer, but it seems like it may be the lesser of two evils.
Really? See, it's a hard pill to swallow, to be honest. Now, I'm not an expert on this, but let me tell you what somebody who called in once, who said he was an expert, so that's kind of my disclaimer a little bit. He said that the nuclear power plants in America are built in such a secure way that we are safe while using nuclear power plants in America. The problem is that Cuba has one that is built similarly to the one that was in Chernobyl, and Cuba being close enough to be a big issue for us was his concern.
Sure, that would be a concern. I mean, whatever we do, we're going to have consequences. We cannot have the luxury of having all of the cheap electricity that we're so used to without having some consequences that we're going to have to pay for. The long-range effect is my guess is that if we devoted a great deal of energy, I mean, the kind of energy that we put into, putting a man on the moon, kind of energy with top minds working on this, and I think that we could, develop reactors that were safe, probably smaller ones, probably more diversely, situated across the country, and I know that it's not an issue that I'm in a position yet to defend, but what was disclosed in the film Pandora's Promise is that there's two types of reactors. There's a soft water reactor and there's the breeder reactor, and the breeder reactor is a second or third generation reactor, and they can actually use the spent fuel from other reactors and produce electricity with them.
Really?
And they can use it over and over and over again. They're more expensive to build, but their lifespan is really great, and we can actually reduce the amount of nuclear waste that's on our planet right now by building these reactors and using that. In fact, they're even thinking of building them to get rid of that waste. But why not generate electricity while you're doing it?
Is plutonium or any nuclear resource finite?
The problem that people cite with breeder reactors is they do produce material that could be used in weapons grade, but that has just got to be something that's overcome.
Okay.
There's a lot of countries that can do this, that have the capacity to do this, that aren't producing weapons, and there's only, I think, 4 or 5 are: United States, Russia, China, India, Pakistan, and North Korea.
But I guess what I was trying to ask is it could we deplete it? Is there enough of it to last us a very, very long time?
No, actually, there's enough. In particular, with breeder reactors, there's enough uranium that we can get out of seawater that was estimated. We don't even have to mine it. You can get it out of seawater in a viable sense, and would last 20,000 years or something. That was estimated.
Oh, wow! So what happens to the nuclear waste that we always hear about, as far as it being stockpiled somewhere out west? What happens to that?
Well, it's the nuclear waste that's already been stockpiled. If breeder reactors are accepted and become accepted in the United States, we can use that nuclear waste to generate more power. That's the neat thing about the breeder reactors, is that they can use the spent fuel over and over and over again. Right now, the spent fuel that is in storage has I'm not sure what the half-life of all of it is, but some of it's tens and tens of thousands of years. It will still be poisonous and radioactive. But when you're through with the spent fuel from a breeder reactor, its half-life is only 800 years. In 800 years, it reaches background levels of radiation. So it's not something that has to be stored, for tens of thousands of years to make it safe. So what I'm suggesting, Larry, is that we look into this. I know we have gotten terribly afraid of nuclear energy, but the truth of the matter is, with increased carbon dioxide, we have to find a source that's other than coal. And one of the things that the people in Pandora's Promise brought out is that when all is said and done, if you're anti-nuclear, then you are by default pro-coal.
Okay, it seems I don't know. It seems like something could go wrong. Sabotage, anything could go wrong. But I'll take you at your word for the sake of the time.
No, don't take me at my word. But look into it. That's why I'm.
All right. Well, let me just rephrase that then. Because of the interest of, I want to make sure people know what's in the book, and my job in 25 minutes is to get that across to our audience. And what I'm getting at is, if I sat here and debated you, first of all, you've looked into this more than I have. So I'm a weak opponent. But second of all, there are other things in the book I wanted to bring up because it's only fair to the book. One of the things that you think that you say is similar to the John Lennon song, Imagine There's No Religion. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, I understand that sentiment. I understand the connection to wars, to religion. But I think there's also an argument to be made that religion has civilized us in many ways, from being barbarians and treating each other kindly, And I'm not focusing on one religion. I think all religions, when they're embraced with the intent, I guess, but people do skew them. People do skew their religions. Do you? And I also understand the whole notion that as an atheist, I can be absolutely wanting nothing but good things and moral things for me and my fellow man. Mm-hmm. I don't see any reason why that's not a bad argument. The part that I have issue with is that anybody who tells me they know anything about God is telling me what they believe, not what they know.
Exactly.
And that includes those who say there is no God.
Exactly. And actually, I don't know that atheists or that term should be used for most people who don't believe in God, any more than somebody who doesn't believe in unicorns should be called a unicornist.
Why not?
The belief, because people don't. There's a difference between not believing in God and believing that there is no God. There's a fundamental difference in that. And most people don't believe in God, don't because they haven't seen sufficient evidence to do so. It's as simple as that. They haven't made this determination.
Okay, but I think when we kill each other because we have a different belief, absolutely the stupidest thing we've ever done as human beings is to kill each other because we don't believe the same way as you. The truth is that some of us have come to the conclusion that there is a God, and that the God of the Bible or the Quran or the Torah or whatever it is we've studied is the one that we want to embrace and is the one who's going to maybe give us some guidance as to how to treat our fellow human beings. I don't see why that's such a bad thing.
If the guidance comes through then the Tanakh, if you're a Jew, it comes through the Christian Holy Bible if you're a Christian, and it comes through the Quran if you're a Muslim. And the problem is that is all that people have when they're making these judgments. And you can find in any of these books reasons to hate and to fight and to kill. And that is the problem. If you have an ideological belief, I don't care what it is, the only way it's irrational, or it wouldn't be called a belief, as you mentioned earlier. There's a fundamental difference between a belief and knowledge. And if it's a belief, the only way to defend it is to fight about it. You will never get a consensus on any ideological belief.
Except for the example that America has set. And I know we've had our problems, but the truth is that I have friends that probably fit into every category we've spoken of. I have Jewish friends, I have Muslim friends, I have atheist friends, and we're not wanting to kill each other, nor really, for the most part, are we trying to recruit each other. Mm-hmm. Even the Scientologists, who I'm not really sure if God is part of their belief or not, but still they're reading what L. Ron Hubbard wrote, and they're saying, well, this is the way we should be living our lives. And I don't know that they're calling L. Ron Hubbard a deity, but they're kind of taking a philosopher, let's put it that way, and saying, this is a good path. I like this path. And so why would I question that? If it's good for them, why would I question it?
Because it's good for everybody. It isn't something that has to be theological in basis. When you said earlier that religions have promoted civilized behavior, I would tend to disagree with that. I think that until we really became religious, that our behavior was probably much more civil than it is today.
Okay. I could argue that with one simple thing.
Okay.
The one simple thing is the guy in prison who's lived a life of crime and then is taught about the Bible, and I'm not talking about the Bible is my way to prove to everybody that I'm a good person, but I mean the person who really embraces it and really embraces the message of why don't you just be the golden rule, be do unto others as you would have them do unto me. The person who embraces that after having lived a life of crime clearly is more civilized than he was before.
Yes, and that is a road, and you could also make that argument, with people with drug addiction and stuff. People who have been involved with drugs, if they find some solace in a religion, but that is not the way we need to judge things. As far as I'm concerned, Larry, I think what we need to look at is for every person that has benefited in that way from prison, How many people have been killed in the name of defending or promoting or encouraging the belief in a God?
Too many. No, I'll be the first to agree with you. The whether it was the Christian Crusaders or the modern day Al Qaeda's, they're on the same wavelength as absolutely opposite of what Jesus Christ was teaching, by the way, which is not the same as religion. I mean, we're talking about teachings versus what people believe is a religion.
Well, first of all, let's just go back and talk about that. I'm sure if you study this a little bit, you know that there is absolutely no one ever recorded what Jesus said during his lifetime.
In writing,
Not
they
a
did.
single word.
In writing, they did. In writing, they did.
They did not.
What do you mean they did not? I can read it right now.
Nothing. That's what people said Jesus said. No one ever.
But that's what
wrote in the Bible.
But that's what recording. That's what recording is. Recording is the documentation.
What they should say, Larry, nobody ever remembered or recorded what Jesus said during his lifetime, and that made it into the Bible. Everything that's a quote in the Bible that said Jesus said this was completely made up. He may have said that. He may not have said that. The truth of the matter is, we have no idea what Jesus said.
Well, except for the fact that it was spoken. It was a spoken record, and spoken records were not unusual back in those days. They had no reason to write in the same way we have reason to write now. They didn't sell books. They didn't make a profit by writing. They clearly were sharing the stories that they had seen until the point where somebody wrote them down. Now, if you're referring to the 60-year time span that took from the day Jesus walked until the first words were written, I guess you're right about that. But that doesn't mean that they weren't recorded, nor does it mean that they weren't recorded accurately. In the same way that the Native Americans were carrying on traditions with their stories.
Yes, they did. They carried on traditions with their stories. There's no question about it.
I have stories in my own family that probably have never been written. But I know them because my dad told me, and I told my son.
But they shouldn't be given as quotes. They should be given as, according to so-and-so, it's believed that Jesus said this or Jesus said that. We're sort of nitpicking here.
We are nitpicking.
A lot of what's attributed to Jesus are beautiful sayings that could be universally accepted. But I just think it's important to realize that nothing in the Bible, nothing that Jesus said was recorded during his lifetime.
Well, would you agree with this, though? That if somebody embraces a philosophy and attaches it to a specific person, whether it's Jesus Christ, John Lennon, the Buddha, anybody, and it actually makes their life better and their community better, isn't it a good thing?
I don't know. Because if that's all that was associated with that belief, I would say yes, no problem. I don't care what people believe. I care how people behave, and if a belief can help you behave in a more civilized, responsible manner, then I'm all for it. But that is not the case with any ideology. I don't care whether it's cultural or religious or political or whatever. When you accept an ideology, you cannot defend it because it is a belief. It is not knowledge. It doesn't mean that it's wrong, but it does mean that you will never get a consensus about it.
Jeb Taylor is our guest, and I have loved this conversation, Jeb. I'm looking at the clock, and that's the only reason I'm trying to wrap it up. The book is called Saving Civilization. Obviously, you're a deep thinker. We may disagree, but I bet you if we had longer to talk, we'd find out that we agreed in many, many ways. I have a copy of Jeb's book. If you would like it, call me. The rest of us have to go buy it. Do you have a website you can tell me about in like 10 seconds?
Yes. Just go to savingcivilization.net, and the book can be ordered on there. And I have a feeling, Larry, that we have very, very similar motives, although different ways of approaching it.
Good way to end it. Jeb, thank you so much. Thank you for being on the air with us today.
Thank you for having me.
This is WOCA Ocala. We'll be right back.
Fox News Radio, I'm Pat O'Neill. It's destroyed about 100 homes already, and it's threatening many others. A huge wildfire in the Texas Panhandle.
Mandatory evacuations are in place in Hutchinson County, Texas, just north of Amarillo, where officials expect it will be windy again today. Schools are closed.